I'd like to tell you a story about a country that accidentally poisoned themselves. Throughout the 60s, for this asshole to go. We'll start again. I'd like to tell you a story about a country that accidentally poisoned themselves. Throughout the 60s, people were traveling like never before. These new things called interstates made travel by car so easy. And by the end of the decade, 80% of American households had an automobile. Things like satellites and robots were leaving science fiction and becoming reality. Simultaneously, this poison blunted the IQ of an estimated half of the US population. And the most vulnerable group was children. Children born in the 60s and 70s who were affected lost an estimated 6 IQ points. And the poison was lead, and the country was this one. The bottom line is that lead and gasoline made combustion engines run better, so it was added. Smartphone use among teens comes with many dangerous and unintended side effects. Limiting the damages should be a concern to all of us. Let's try to understand the problem and see what we can do about it. Smartphones have many positive aspects. They help us out in our day-to-day lives. But viewing smartphones as an experience blocker is an important part to understanding the problem. The importance of play cannot be overstated when talking about the development of a child's mind. It helps with things like conflict resolution, provides immediate and in-person feedback, things you don't get through communication with a smartphone. And the decline in social trust since the 90s has only been turbocharged by the use of smartphones today, leading to even less play. Other technologies that have affected our lives are on this chart here: radio, TV, and the personal computer versus time. I'd like this green line to represent the widespread adoption of smartphones around 2010. As we begin to paint a picture of the unintended consequences, let's look at some of the data and try and understand the scale. There has been a sudden rise of internalizing disorders, such as anxiety and depression. When you compare them to bipolar, substance abuse, or anorexia, which remained relatively flat, you see a sharp increase right after 2010. In the age groups most affected are teens and preteens. This effect is especially pointed for girls. This graph shows emergency room visits for self-harm for children ages 10 through 14. You can see this drastic increase right after 2010. This is a tangible problem and a worldwide phenomenon. You see graphs similar to this in Latin countries, European countries, Asian countries, and the US. But human beings are great fixers, and once we agree there's a problem, we are great at finding a solution. So what can we do? Collective action. When considering a new phone for your teen, opting for a flip phone instead of a smartphone can be one of the best things you do. And communicating with other parents and getting them on board with flip phones can make your children feel less isolated. Teaching your kids the importance of focus and how valuable their focus is another important part of the solution. Pressuring lawmakers to install guardrails can be part of the solution. After all, there is a legal drinking age for a reason. Social media companies installing age restrictions or informing parents of exactly the dangers that your kids are being exposed to can also be part of the solution. One trend called #MonkMode is a great example of Gen Z taking responsibility for themselves by putting down the smartphones and the social media They realize there's a problem, and they're looking for answers. When we began adding lead to gasoline, we assumed the benefits would outweigh the risks. With the help of hindsight, I think we'd have no problem agreeing how wrong we were. Will smartphones and social media usage take the same arc through humanity? I'd like to leave you with a quote from social psychologist Jonathan Haidt. He says, "We overprotect our children in the real world, and we underprotect them online." 5 years ago, it was possible to say the link between mental health and smartphones was just correlation. But that's not true any longer. It's not correlation, it's causation. Q&A?